In 1939, at the age of 17, Stanley Lieber got a job as an assistant at the newly formed Timely Comics. Lieber did the monotonous work around the studio, such as making sure the artist's inkwells were full, but his ambition was to always be a writer. In 1941, using the pseudonym Stan Lee, he wrote Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge in Captain America Comics No. 3. Later that same year, comic legends Joe Simon and Jack Kirby left the company after a pay dispute with Timely Comics publisher Martin Goodman. Goodman had such faith in Lee that even though he was only 19 at the time, he made him the lead editor. Years later, Lee had written the story for a team of superheroes and worked with a freelance Jack Kirby to flesh it out. That team was the Fantastic Four. Wanting to focus on superhero comics, Timely became Marvel Comics in 1961. After the success of the Fantastic Four, Lee continued to collaborate with Kirby. He started thinking of his next book and wanted to make more of a non-traditional hero. He loved the 1931 film Frankenstein with Boris Karloff. He thought it was interesting that while the monster was treated as the bad guy, it was really the townsfolk that were the villains. He also thought about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, how the story showcased the struggle of this brilliant scientist who was coping with his alter ego, a ruthless killer. He decided to combine both Frankenstein as well as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde into something new. A scientist, Dr. Bruce Banner, and his alter ego, the monstrous Incredible Hulk. In May of 1962, the first issue of The Incredible Hulk was published. In the comic, Lee originally made the Hulk gray, but their printer could never keep the color consistent, so he changed him to green starting with issue 2. He picked green simply because there wasn't any other superheroes at the time using the color. In 1978, the character made it to dramatic live-action TV with The Incredible Hulk. The show was very popular and lasted 5 seasons from 1978 to 1982. Years later, Tim Burton's Batman becomes the highest-grossing film of 1989, pulling in over $411 million. Wanting to strike while the iron was hot, producers Avi Arad and Gale Ann Hurd began development for a Hulk movie in 1990. After some conceptual work, the movie distribution rights were picked up by Universal. Over the next few years, the scripts for the Hulk movie were all over the place. One had Hulk fighting terrorists, while another had Banner using gamma-radiated insect DNA to turn convicts into hybrid Hulk insect men. In 1997, Joe Johnston was hired to direct. He was picked up due to his work on the hugely successful Jumanji. Johnson left the production, and Jonathan Hensley, a co-producer and the husband of Gale Ann Hurd, took the helm as director. The movie went into pre-production, with Industrial Light and Magic working on the computer effects, as well as the practical makeup for the insect men. In 1998, Universal halted the production due to fears of giving a $100 million tentpole production to a first-time director. They went back to scripting, and after numerous rewrites, it was presented to director Ang Lee in 2001. Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was a massive critical hit, and his skills were in high demand. Lee liked the idea, but wasn't happy with the script. He agreed to come on to direct if his longtime working partner, James Schamus, could write the script. At the same time, Warner Brothers was courting Lee to direct Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. When Universal accepted his offer, he turned down the Terminator sequel, and the Hulk movie finally moved forward. Schamus took elements from the previous scripts and melded them into something Lee was happy with. The movie was originally more of what you would consider to be an action comic book movie. The new script Schamus wrote played out more like a drama, focusing on the human aspects of Banner, with the Hulk coming into play later. Originally, Hulk was going to be a giant animatronic, but with ILM's involvement, they decided to make a fully realized CG character. They sculpted maquettes until they had a design they were happy with. They scanned the models into the computer and used them as the foundation for the CG Hulk. They researched bodybuilders, studied muscles, and how skin moved. While this was going on, they worked on casting. Lee wanted Eric Bana for the lead. He saw him in the 2000 film Chopper and knew he'd be perfect for the role. Jennifer Connelly was hired to play Betty Ross. She was drawn to the project because it wasn't the usual comic book movie. It was more along the lines of a Greek tragedy. Sam Elliott was hired to play General Ross. He accepted the role without even reading the script because he just wanted to work with Lee. Before filming, he did try to get Lee to let him shave his mustache, since the military discourages facial hair. Lee refused simply because the character in the comics had a very prominent one. Nick Nolte was hired to play David Banner, Bruce's father. They changed his name to David as an homage to the TV series. Nolte's character was a combination of the Leader, Zizzax, and Absorbing Man from the comics. He was told to grow his hair out wildly for the film. This is why he looked so disheveled in his mugshot when he was arrested for drunk driving. Filming started in March of 2002. They shot in various locations in Arizona, Utah, and California. They also used the backlot at Universal in Los Angeles, as well as Stage 12, one of the largest sound stages in the world. The opening was originally an entire filmed sequence. Lee looked at it, and after realizing it slowed the film down too much in the beginning, he had it condensed to play during the opening credits. While the story took a departure from the comics, Lee wanted to make the movie feel like a comic. He did this by using split screens, as well as different edits and dissolves to make some scenes feel like the panels of a comic book. Because of the unique style of the editing, they had to reshoot certain scenes from numerous angles. This was exhausting to the cast and crew because those scenes not only required different takes, but different takes and different angles. The second Hulk out was the first shot ILM started working on, and the last one they finished. Lee knew how he wanted the Hulk to act, so he did the motion capture for the Beast. The Hulk placeholder for the actors to react with was a cardboard cutout on a stick. The Gamma Sphere was a copy of the real one at Berkeley. They had a practical one as well as a CG one that Hulk throws out of the building. The scene with the Gamma Sphere splitting open was the biggest computer render in ILM's history at the time. While Hulk was CG, there still were plenty of practical effects. The lab destruction was all practical, and then they added Hulk in post. They needed Hulk to have a knockdown drag-out fight, but since they couldn't do that with humans, they needed an alternative. They came up with Hulk fighting the Hulk dogs, canines infused with gamma radiation similar to what happened to him. They took the idea from Incredible Hulk number 14 from 2000. This was the first issue with Hulk dogs. The dogs were real dogs, wearing motion capture suits. The fight sequence was storyboarded with Hulk not wearing pants. As they worked to try to conceal his anatomy, Lee said it just didn't work. There were too many things to cover it up, and he said it started to look like Austin Powers. He gave in and put pants on him, but did manage to have him nude by the end. Lee wanted Hulk to crush the dogs, but since they were aiming for a PG-13, they had the dogs burst into mist when they were defeated. When David accidentally kills his wife, they had to blur out the stabbing to get the PG-13. Hulk in the comics is known for wearing purple pants, so not only in the movie does Hulk have this signature pants, but after Banner gets hit with the gamma radiation, the film introduces more purple into the color palette. When Banner picks up Betty in her dream, it's paralleled later as Hulk picks her up as an adult. The computer graphics at the Military Institute took 3 months to complete. Lee put an homage to Jurassic Park as a joke since Joe Johnston left the Hulk to make Jurassic Park 3. Stan Lee and Lou Ferrigno had a cameo in the beginning. Filming was long and arduous. Lee called the movie his Green Destiny, which was the legendary sword in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. At $137 million, this was the most expensive film Universal had produced up to this point. The movie was released on June 20th, 2003, and opened in first place with $62 million. The second week was not as kind, as it had a record-breaking drop of 69.7% in ticket sales. The movie went on to gross over $245 million, which hardly offset the $137 million budget. Creating the Hulk was incredibly time-consuming, and one of the toughest jobs ILM ever did. Hulk alone took 180 ILM technicians, a year and a half of work, and roughly 2.5 million work hours to do the character. Even after all that work, audiences still scoffed at it, saying it looked fake, and jokingly referred to it as superhero Shrek. Universal tried again with a reboot, The Incredible Hulk, in 2008, which made about the same. It pulled in $263 million on a $150 million budget. Much like the comic, Hulk is a unique departure from traditional superheroes. Lee paced the film slower, and it wasn't until 40 minutes into the movie before we saw the first appearance of the Hulk. At 2 hours and 18 minutes, it's a long movie, and due to it being more of a drama than an action movie, it felt like it. Personally, I would have trimmed the movie about 10 minutes to improve the pacing. But Lee deliberately wanted the film to move slowly. This was his superhero opera, as he called it, and when have operas ever been short? The character of Hulk is impressive, and the features they were able to get were amazing. It's a shame some of the scenes weren't composited as well as they could have, which led people to the Shrek comparison. The only part I thought flat out didn't work was the Hulk dogs. They look too fake, and while I'm sure it was incredibly difficult to do, the end result doesn't match the effort that went into it. Besides those issues, Hulk is still an impressive film. Lee's directing is always top-notch, and the way it was edited did help to convey the comic book feel. It must have been a complete bitch to edit, though. It was probably one of the most exciting and simultaneously frustrating work experiences for the editor. Lee called it his most expensive indie movie. It was a AAA superhero film, shot with the sensibilities of an art house flick. Hulk may not rank as one of the best superhero movies ever made, but it will always stand firmly as one of the most unique.